Buying your fibre directly from a producer is a great way of supporting a small business, and it also means that you probably get access to some fibres that you just can't buy anywhere else. And that certainly is the case with this. And in this week's video, I'm going to be spinning up this really beautiful, soft, fine lamb's wool. I've also had a request to show you some more of the local countryside, and I'm going for a little visit to one of the churches that's high up on the cliffs near here. If you're new here, my name is Becca and I'm a hand spinner, knitter and newbie weaver, and you're very welcome to my home in West Wales. Right, let's talk a little bit about this fibre. It came from the Woven Briar. I got a selection box, and this is one of the selection, which is a lamb's wool, and it's a cross between, or the lamb was a cross between a Shetland and an Icelandic sheep. So I challenge you to find that anywhere else than from, directly from a farmer. And let's have a little look at it. It's pretty short staple length. It is uber fine. It's really, really soft. I mean, this is definitely next to the skin soft. And as you can see, it's in a lovely little carded roving. So Beck blade shears rather than clipper shears. It's a slower process, therefore a little bit more expensive. And certainly this was a bit more expensive than if I'd say gone to World of Wool. The theory is that you don't get any second cuts. I certainly haven't found any second cuts. There is the odd bit of kind of grass seed and bit of hay, not very much, and you just pick it out. And to be honest, you get that, I think you get that wherever you buy your fibre from. The theory is that there's not as much lanolin in it because it's not been cut as closely to the animal's skin, and certainly this doesn't feel particularly greasy. It is also thought to be better for the sheep's sort of general management and welfare because they've got a little bit more kind of fleece left on their backs at a time of the year where maybe the weather's not 100%. I mean, certainly this year, my goodness, the rain. If somebody who lives in Wales tells you that it's been raining, you know the rain's been biblical. I mean, it just has not stopped. So lots of really positive things. Beck also chooses to shear her ewes before they lamb. And so they're not carrying around that great big weight of fleece when they're also carrying around the weight of their lambs. So I was highly impressed. Don't know enough about sheep farming to tell you all the pros and cons of it, but it certainly seemed like a really good way to manage your sheep and certainly very doable for a small farmer and a small producer. I'm extremely happy to spin this. I'm very happy to recommend it, and I will put all the links in the description below. So I'm just going to just very briefly talk about wool and the global market for wool without boring you, hopefully. In the UK, all sheep farmers have to send their wool to the depots run by the Wool Marketing Board, unless you have an exemption. And the exemption can be that you process it yourself or you sell it to hand spinners or various things like that. So you can get an exemption, you don't have to do it. The Wool Marketing Board then collects it all up, grades it, and the people that grade the wool, they have to do a 5-year training. So they really do know their stuff. It's then graded and sent to auction, and then the farmers get the money from the wool that's been sent to auction. The problem with all this is that we do have a global market for wool, and for the average farmer in 2021, they were probably getting about 40 pence per kilo for their fleece, and it was costing them about £1.50 to shear and transport the fleece to the depots. So it doesn't really work out. So it's not that surprising that there is not a bigger culture of fibre production in this country. I think there is much more of a culture in America. I get the distinct impression there are many more farmers that farm specifically for fibre. I mean, considering what a massive industry it used to be in this country, it really is quite surprising that we no longer really focus on fibre production. And that's globalisation, I guess. So I'm not going to get political because, that's not what this podcast is about. This is definitely about spinning and creating. So I will leave that there. I mean, feel free to do your own research, but for British sheep farmers producing this stuff, it's not a big money maker. And considering the amount of money that you have to pay for 100% wool knitting yarn, wow, somebody somewhere's making some money, but I can tell you it's not the farmers. So, on that note, I'm going to get the wheel out and see how this spins up. Fine lamb's wool is not something I have a huge amount of experience spinning, so I'm making sure that I'm setting up my wheel completely properly. I'm adjusting the tension on the drive band to make sure that the take up is not too fierce, because this is a very delicate fibre. So back and forwards, just testing, and I'd like to say I've got a hack to tell you so you know exactly what tension you have, but actually it's just practice. And I know this wheel very well. I've been spinning on it for about the last 16 years, so I know about where I need to be with these things. I'm going to spin with a short forward draw. These are very, very delicate fibres, and I just don't think anything else is going to be suitable. But I'm going to start on the larger whirl, which you wouldn't necessarily think you should. With a fine fibre and something that maybe needs a lot of twist, you would think you would need the smaller whirl, which is a higher ratio or a faster whirl. But this is such delicate, beautiful fibre, I don't want to over twist it. So I'm starting off with my ratio, which on this wheel is 7:1, and I'm just seeing how it feels. Very often the fibre will tell you how it wants to be spun. And okay, that's a little bit woo-woo, I guess, but really just feel it in your hands, how it's spinning, and I'm trying to keep my hands very light. When I come across a little bit of maybe a second cut, in this case not a second cut, but whenever I'm spinning and I come across a second cut or a piece of grass or something, I stop treadling and pick it out. You cannot treadle your way out of trouble. So stop spinning, make the adjustments, take out the bit of fluff or whatever it is, and carry on spinning. I'm just doing a ply back test there, and it's probably not quite where I want it to be. So I'm just changing down to the different whirl, which is 9:1, and just seeing how that feels. I'm going to do a ply back test and just really not make any hard and fast decisions until I've spun quite a goodly amount. So I had 40 grams of this fibre to start with, so I split it in half and then in half again, because I'm going to make a 2-ply. But I really am just playing around at the moment. I don't know how this is going to spin. It's not something I've spun before. Really, for an awful lot of my spinning life, I've been spinning Jacob and Llyn, because those are the fleeces that I used to get given by my sheep keeping friend. I'm sure I've shared before, I used to help him with dagging and worming and general maintenance of his flock, for which he would pay me in fleeces, which I was very, very happy to accept. Now you can just see I was putting too much tension on, so snapped it. Back to the drawing board. So I've gone back up to my larger whirl to try and put not quite so much twist in, and just maybe be a little bit more gentle. So I've stopped spinning just to try and explain ratios and whirls. In the simplest form, on an Ashford traditional, you've got two sizes of whirl, or a 1980s Ashford traditional. On modern ones, I think you've got four. And the ratio is the number of times this turns round, so the flyer turns round, in relationship to the number of times the big wheel turns round. So on here, I have a little piece of yarn, And what you can do is just tie a piece of yarn on there and count the number of times the flyer goes round compared to the number of times the big wheel goes round. And now for something completely different. I've had lots of comments telling me how much you enjoy seeing the countryside around where I live, and in particular the small Welsh churches. So, as per requested, I'm going on a little field trip up the road from me to show you this little church. High on the cliffs overlooking Strumble Head is the Church of St Gwyndaf. And St Gwyndaf is a contemporary of St David, the patron saint of Wales. The church is thought to date to the 6th century, but has been rebuilt many times over the years. But it still features some very historic items. Way up in the rafters is what's thought to be one of the original beams that held up the wooden church, and it has a carving that looks very Viking. The Vikings get a bad rap because they were blamed for raiding the churches, and it's thought that the Cathedral of St David's was set down from the cliffs so the Viking raiders couldn't get there. However, there was definitely a settled population of people that would have called themselves Viking or Danish that lived in this area from about the 5th century onwards. If you're somebody with mobility issues, then churches are often good places to visit as they have good disabled access, and this one is no exception. The church houses a Welsh Bible, as in a Bible that was written in Welsh, and the naughty French invaders of 1797 are supposed to have tore it up and lit a fire with it, and it was considered to be an act of desecration, although historians think that maybe they were just trying to keep themselves warm, as they'd got rather wet when they tried to invade Pembrokeshire. Across the lane from the church is a holy well, and this would have been a place of pilgrimage probably long before the church was built. And really, it's very logical, because finding clean, fresh water was something that was extremely important to our ancestors before the days when you just turned the tap on and fresh water came out. Next to the church, there is a small wildflower meadow, which at the moment is not really looking anything, but in a few months' time it will be filled with beautiful wildflowers. If you find yourself in North Pembrokeshire, I can highly recommend this little church. It's not a huge tourist attraction, but it's very peaceful and it has a beautiful view. I hope you enjoyed the little trip out, and we're back at home and I have finished spinning and plying and finishing. I'm going to knit this up, and I'll show you at the end of the video what it looks like knitted up. I've got a few thoughts about it. Really, it's been really good fun to actually spin something where I know a little bit about where it came from and the story behind the flock and the story behind the farmer and how it was produced. That was really lovely, and you know, it sort of added to the whole experience because I could totally understand where it came from. And okay, I guess I'm a bit of an old hippie. I really appreciate that. It resonates with me when I can make a connection with what I'm creating with where it came from. Yeah, that was a very kind of backwards way of saying, yeah, I really enjoyed spinning it. And I've sort of decided that I'm going to try and find more producers that are selling direct and selling not necessarily raw fleece. Maybe I'll do one raw fleece this year. I don't really have the space that I used to have when I was kind of processing a lot of raw fleece, so maybe I'll just do one just for the fun of it, because I really do miss doing that. I mean, I used to really enjoy processing raw fleece. So I also wanted to just share a quick thought as to how we can feel very powerless when we're facing things that are kind of global. And, you know, it really feels fundamentally wrong to me that the farmers who are producing what basically is this amazing product, and wool, I'm talking about wool in general, they really struggle to make a living, and it just doesn't seem right. So I sort of wanted to put it out there to say, if it is, sorry, the dog's whining. She hates it when I sit down and talk to the video camera. She really does. Anyway, I digress. I wanted to put it out there. If you can, within reason, support a small producer, and obviously it's going to depend completely on your personal circumstances, then I would encourage you to do that. It really makes a huge difference to someone who is a small business. And as somebody who used to run a small business, I really appreciated that my customers would pay a little bit more than maybe if they'd gone to the supermarket, because we had a food business, that they'd pay a little bit more because they were supporting a small business. So I sort of wanted to put it out there to say, if you can support a small producer, I think it's a really fantastic thing to do. Obviously, it's not going to be practical for everybody, but if it's something you can do, then just take a little bit of time, do a little bit of research, and, you know, Google is your friend, and find a local producer who is producing a product that really resonates with you. Okay, so a couple of things. I've sort of decided I'm going to try and do a couple of videos a week if I can, and a sort of beginning of the week, maybe Monday or Tuesday video, would be about my natural dyeing, because we're sort of getting into the season where I'm really starting to do quite a lot of natural dyeing. And then sort of end of the week would be more this kind of blog, vlog, video podcast style, whatever it is we're calling this, video podcast, there you go, that's what we're calling it, this video podcast sort of style at the end of the week. And I've got a knitting book I want to do a review of for next time, and I've also got another roving from this lovely selection box that I've been spinning from. So I'm going to go away, knit this up, I'll drop it in at the end of the video. So until next time, my friends, happy creating. This is beautifully soft, and it ended up at about 16 wraps per inch, which is sport weight. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it, so if you've got any bright ideas, please drop them in the comments below.